Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this new lesson of the English Art Club by WAAM. Tonight, we're going to talk about an American painter, Edward Hopper. Edward Hopper is widely known for his oil paintings and etchings, and both his rural and city scene give us a clear reflection of his idea of American life. This is a picture of the artist. We're going to see that he was quite a peculiar man, I would say. Edward Hopper was born on the 22nd of July 1882 in Nyack, a city near the River Hudson, north of New York. He showed a great talent in art since he was very young. Consider that he started dating and signing his paintings by the age of 10. He shared his passion for both French and Russian art with his father. At the beginning, when he was quite young, he thought he wanted to become a naval architect. But then later on, he changed his mind and decided to go to art school in New York. His parents thought that career in art would be very difficult, so they suggested him to study commercial art. He did it. He also did some work in this field and, for example, in the field of illustration, but he didn't like it very much. Here, for example, we can see a self-portrait he did when he was quite young and going to art school. Art school was a very important moment in the life of this artist. There, he met Robert Harry, an artist and a teacher of art classes. Robert Harry had a very personal view about art, and he tried to inspire his students to do something different in the world of art. For example, he suggested them to forget about art and just paint whatever they felt like painting. And also, he suggested that it isn't the subject of the painting which is important that counts, but really your impression about it and how you feel about it. He also suggested his students to give a modern touch to their artworks. During the initial years of the art school and at the beginning of his career, Hopper did a lot of self-portraits, and here you can see another example. He got inspired a lot by French art. How did it happen? Well, while studying and afterwards while working, he started working at an advertising agency. And as I said before, he didn't really like this work. So in order to take a pause and do something different, he left New York and went to Paris, a city which he visited and loved. He especially loved some of the artists he got to know while he was in Paris. For example, he was highly impressed by this painting by Rembrandt, which is called Night Watch, and he thought it was the most wonderful painting he had ever seen. During that trip to Paris, he wasn't very affected by the new currents in art. For example, later on, he admitted that he had never heard the name of Picasso. Consider that he went to Paris in the 20s of the 19th century, so probably he got in touch with the name of this great Spanish artist, but as I said before, he wasn't very interested in it. On the contrary, he was very impressed by two other French artists, like Degas, for example, and Manet. You can see two examples of their artworks here. We will see some of the details we can see in these paintings later on in Edward Hopper's production. First of all, have a look at the expressions on the face of these ladies. Their resignation, I would say, this alienation also, this great difficulty in communicating something, and also, especially in the gas portrait of that young lady at the bar, we can see really how this character seems detached from all the others in the paintings. She's there with a man, he's sitting next to her, but she's not paying him any attention. She seems to be thinking about something else. She seems very alone, even while she is in company. The same goes for the other girl, the girl at the bar counter by Manet, who has this expression. We can see the atmosphere around her is very lively. We can see there is a lot of people, but she doesn't seem to be part of that situation at all. Degas also inspired Edward Hopper in the way he portrayed spaces and details in rooms, for example. If you have a look at the perspective we can have in this painting by Degas, we might associate it with paintings that Edward Hopper later did of rooms and beds and people with them. Also, in order to escape from his professional life, which, as I said before, he didn't like, but to which he was bound because of economical necessities he had, he started etching. And in a few years, he realized 70 of the artworks we have and he produced in these media. And also thanks to these etchings, he got his initial recognition. As you can see, he decided to portray scenes from the urban life in New York and Paris. Here you can see a couple in the compartment of a train, and we'll see that later on he depicted other characters in the same place, basically. Another very important moment in the life of the artist happened in 1923 when he re-encountered Josephine Livingston, who was a fellow artist who was at the art school with him. They met again and they married a year later. They were opposite, really. He was tall, she was short, she was very talkative, he was very shy, she was very liberal, he was a conservative, but they stayed together for their entire life. Consider that Hopper died in May 1967, and his wife died only 10 months later. As I said, also Jo was an artist, but she subordinated her career to her husband's wife. She managed all the interviews of Edward Hopper, his career in general, and it's also thanks to her that an art gallery decided to exhibit some of his work colors, and the success of these artists started. All these happened towards the middle years of the 1920s. Thankfully, he went through Great Depression without great problems, and his career took a great rise in 1931 when the Whitney Museum in New York and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, also in New York, decided to buy his artworks for a great sum of money. Edward Hopper was so famous and was also considered such good at representing American life that he was also on the cover of the Time magazine in 1956. At the same time, it was so berber and he was so introvert also that he got quite angry when this happened. He wasn't really interested in being famous and in fame in general. Consider that he got a small studio near Washington Square in New York when he was very young, and even later on, when he became richer, he didn't change it. He didn't decide to buy, for example, a bigger house or anything. He decided to stay there because he loved the area and also he loved really his routine. As I said before, Edward Hopper was a realist painter who succeeded in grasping the solitude of America and his characters. His characters and paintings are almost metaphysical, and he depicts situations that that almost seem unreal and very mysterious. The color he uses, for example, are very vibrant, but the situations don't seem to be very lively. Actually, the time seems to have stopped. In addition to that, the spaces that he depicts are real, but the characters in them and the way he represents them and the framing, the almost cinematographic framing he uses, give the viewer a sense of restlessness. He also uses light to define his character in a dramatic way, not only his character, but also the spaces. We'll see that it works a lot on light and on the effects of light on things and places. In the paintings, it seems like he's spying on his characters who are all unaware of his presence and obviously of the presence of the viewer. The situation he depicts give us this idea also because they are real situations and the setting are real places in which we may have also been. And the characters who in many cases are alone or are in a couple but alone at the same time have this very introspective aura. As the artist stated, his aim in art has always been that one of giving his personal impression of life. In fact, the artist defined himself as an impressionist painter more than a realist one. Another topic of the paintings of this artist is the conflict between the characters and also the conflicts between rural and urban life and the past and the progress. Obviously, as I said before, since the settings of the paintings are iconic places that are very familiar to us, like for example, fast food, cinemas, offices, houses, hotels, we really feel drawn inside the situations he represents and he depicts. And also because sometimes we can share the feeling of alienation, of loneliness that these characters feel. Someone has said, some critics have said that these paintings are like mirrors for us. They make us realize how we feel sometimes. We can get an example in some of the paintings he realized at the beginning of his career. Hopper's solitary figures are almost all the time women, which might be dressed or semi-clad or even nude. We'll see that later on the subject of his paintings, his model will be Jo, his wife. Also because she was very jealous of his man and she didn't want any other model to pose for him. In New York interior, Girl at the Sewing Machine and Moonlight Interior, we can see 3 examples of paintings with women. In Moonlight Interior and New York Interior, the girl depicted is not looking at us. We're just seeing her bare back. And in a Girl at Sewing Machine, this girl is sewing in front of a window during a bright sunny day, and she's not looking at the viewer. Girl at Sewing Machine is one of the first of many paintings Edward Hopper did in which the characters are next to a window, the so-called window paintings. For many critics, these artworks with these girls are his commentary on solitude. As I said before, women play an important role in Edward Hopper's production, and one of his most famous paintings is definitely Summertime. Here we can find all the elements of Hopper's art. We have a solitary girl who is sitting on her bed. We might get the idea that she slept alone. It's the beginning of the morning and no one's there in the room with her. Also, the bed gives us the idea that probably she slept alone. And we might consider that she's single maybe, and she doesn't have anyone to share her drama, her worries, her problems with. Let's focus on the window. Again, we have a window as a source of natural light. We can find 2 elements that are quite common in Edward Hopper's painting. The first are those yellow bricks we can see on the wall outside, which give us the idea that it's a rural context, and also the orangish building we can see, which suggests that probably the setting of this painting is New York. We'll see, if you remember, we saw it also before, that these yellow bricks are a recurrent detail in Edward Hopper's painting. The girl is facing directly the window, the outside. She has these fixed expressions, this very plastic pose. She seems to be like waiting for something to happen, and this is a feeling we get in many of Edward Hopper's paintings. It always seems like something is about to happen, something probably not very nice, something negative is about to happen or has just happened. Light plays a key role, as I said before. It dramatically gives the like a frame to the characters in the paintings, and it does here too. Obviously, the fact that this woman is alone, her figure stands against that empty wall in the background, gives us this idea of solitude, of alienation, this not very positive feeling, I would say. As we said before, not only women are key figures in Edward Hopper's painting, but also places, iconic rural or city places, like in this case, the cinema. The title of this painting is New York Movie. Here we can find again this solitary girl, an usherette, working in this cinema in New York. And we know that the painter took a lot of time to work on all the details of the room of this cinema, and the floors and the curtains at the entrance. And also he worked a lot on the depiction of light. Again, the model is Jo, his wife. And here we can see again as the solitude that permeates the scenes of this artist. We have people, we can see some heads in the room watching the movie. A movie that is a moment in which people can stop thinking about their life, their problems, can enjoy some time for themselves, a time spent with other people, some free time. As these people are like relaxing, enjoying their movie, the girl is standing against the wall, reflective. She seems to be thinking about something, maybe something that worries her. She's not interested at all in the movie, which she probably has already seen a lot of times. She is just thinking about herself. She's not attracted by what's happening around her. The characters depicted by Edward Hopper are sometimes not alone, like it happens in Chop Suey, one of his most famous paintings. Here we can find two girls sitting in front of each other and also another couple in the background. Here we can find many detailed elements. For example, the face of the girl and her hat and dress and the coat hanging behind her. We can also see some of the details of the couple in the background, like the fact that he's smoking. We can also see the sign of the restaurant outside, the lower mast windows, all elements that give us also a sensory feeling to the painting. We can almost hear the buzzing sounds, the smell of the cigarette smoked, or even the texture of the coat hanging. As we said before, Edward Hopper's aim was to give a transcription in his painting, in his art, of his intimate impression of art. And so in this case, it seems like he's depicting some kind of a memory he has. In fact, like he's painting from a memory, the details of the primary things, the most important things, are very clear and defined, whether the others are more blurred. The fact that it seems like it's painting from a memory also withdraw from the idea of complete realism in his paintings. It seems like all the details are only in the part of the painting which we can be seen by our gaze line, and whatever is above it has many details, less details. That's definitely not the only painting by Edward Hopper set in a restaurant. Automat is another one, and here we can see a solitary figure again. Automats were places open all hours of the day, at all hours of the day, in which people could stop for a quick lunch or a dinner or pause, and were very, very busy and noisy. The girl here, obviously, again, Jo was the model, even if Edward had to, let's say, change some of the details, because by the time this painting was realized in 1927, Jo was already 44 years old. The girl is sitting alone at a table, and we can get the idea that it's night because the background is very dark and we can see a reflection of identical rows of light on the glass behind her. The situation and the circumstances and the mood are quite ambiguous here. We do not know anything about this girl. Some details can help us understand what's happening, what's the context. For example, the fact that she's wearing a very big coat, suggesting that probably it was winter time. She's also wearing gloves. even if she's wearing only one glove. This helps us realizing that maybe she has just entered the place, she has just sat down and she is waiting to get warmer before taking it off. Or this may suggest the idea that she is on a rush, so she doesn't have the time to take off also the second glove. This might be the real situation. Also because we can see an empty saucer before the cup, so we might understand that she ate something already. We might think that being night, the girl has just finished working, or she's having a quick pause before coming back to work, or she is about to start working at night. The general situation, the expression on the girl's face, the fact that she seems to hold on to that cup of coffee like it's the most important thing she has in her life, contributed to make this painting become an example of the representation of solitude and alienations in opera's production. In this case, the focal point, let's say, of the artwork are the legs of the girl, which are the highest spot in the painting, turning this girl in almost the object of desire and therefore making the viewer some kind of voyeur. We'll see that we'll get this feeling a lot again by looking at Edward Hopper's paintings. This girl, let's see, was a model for other artists. Let's have a look, for example, at this painting by Mark Rothko, in which we can find a girl which has some similar features to Edward Hopper's one. Legs became a focal point in a painting by Edward Hopper. Also later, we can see compartment C, card 293, this painting, which he realized in 1938. Here again, we have a solitary girl sitting on these in this compartment car, going anywhere, we don't know where. She seems to be very drawn to her book or newspaper, whatever she's reading, and she's not looking back at the viewer, obviously. Another detail that we can find here is are the spaces outside the window of the compartment car. We can see some details about the landscape surrounding and also details about light. Here we can find two examples of light used by Edward Hopper. So the artificial light inside the compartment car, but also natural light in the background and behind the landscape. The use of green as the color of the background surrounding the girl in this black dress obviously helped her to stand out even more. In Silent in a Cafeteria, again, we go back to a restaurant in which you can find two characters this time. A girl sitting at her table with a coffee before her and a man looking outside the window. The two clients of this cafeteria seems to be strangers. They don't even seem to be acting in the same scene, as the girl is covered in sunlight, whether the man is more in the shadow. He is attracted by something happening outside the window, as I said before, and the two really don't interact. In this case, the viewer is really inside the scene and seems to be an horror customer of the cafeteria almost. This painting, realized in 1938, is considered to be somehow the counterpart to Nighthawks, one of the most famous, if not the most famous painting by Edward Hopper. Here, in fact, first of all, the viewer is outside the place in which the scene takes place. We have 3 customers. We also have someone serving the customer, and apparently 2 customers are together. There are a lot of interesting facts about this artwork, which is titled Nighthawks, realized in 1942. First of all, both Joe and Edward Hopper himself served as model for this artwork. We can recognize Joe at the counter. Then another interesting thing is the fact that apparently these artwork is based on a short story by Ernest Hemingway called The Killers. The point of view, let's say, of the viewer is definitely cinematic. It seems like we are approaching the place where the scene is happening. Again, in this case, light plays a dramatic role because it seems to be like setting apart the scene from the dark outside, and from also the fact that the streets outside are empty, there's no one there. As I was saying, the painting seems to have been inspired by a short story by Ernest Hemingway called The Killers, in which there's Nick Adams, one of the recurrent characters of Hemingway, who meets basically these 2 criminals in a cafeteria, and hears that these criminals are about to kill a person. This scene also seems cinematographic, we might say, because we are like spectators waiting to see what's going to happen. Apparently, we're not the only ones who thought that this scene could seem cinematic, cinematographic somehow. Also, Dario Argento, for example, got inspired, we might say, by this artwork. But also, you might see someone else. Someone said that when something is inside The Simpsons, it means that it's really something iconic, and we can agree on the fact that Nighthawks is definitely an iconic painting. And there's also these, let's say, other version of the artwork. The new version of this painting is called Boulevard of Working Dreams by artist Gottfried Helnwein. And we can see some different characters here. We can see Humphrey Bogart, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley as the bartender, and James Dean. Someone think is a parody of Nighthawk, some others think it's an homage, or anyway, a way to depict iconic characters of American history, and compared to also iconic settings and artworks of American history. Nighthawk seems to have inspired also musicians, as you can see here in the cover of album Nighthawks at the Diner by Tom Waits, an American songwriter. Obviously the setting, but also the title speaks for itself, and we can understand that probably Tom Waits was inspired by Edward Hopper. Another setting which Edward Hopper really loved, also because he knew very good, was hotel rooms and hotel lobbies. Here we can see a painting which the artist realized. This painting really seems a snapshot by a noir movie. Again, we see this lady sitting on the bed, and also the pose she has seems to be suggesting that she's about to live. There are other details that give us this idea. For example, the bed which is completely done. We can see the presence of pieces of luggage in the lower left corner. The room seems to be completely empty there. If it wasn't for the woman and the luggage, there wouldn't be any sign of the presence of a human being. And we can also see a car on behind a lady. Apparently, we might think waiting for her. It really seems like the, as I said before, beginning scene of a noir movie. It's interesting to notice that in this case, whether before we saw very clear windows that even reflected something, now on we'll see also in another painting that windows seems to actually be glass without any glass. As I said before, Edward Opera frequently painted hotel rooms or lobbies. It is thought that he did this also because he was very familiar with these places, because he used to travel a lot with his wife, and so he knew these places very well. In hotel lobby, we can find four characters, two men and two women. The two women are sitting. There's a man next to one of them, and then there's a clerk on the right, which is barely visible because of the fact that he's in the shadow. Again, here we can use the use of, we can see the use of light, of artificial light, which is used to dramatically define characters, but also spaces. In fact, behind the man, we can see like a dining room. We can see long shadows next to the women's legs. The idea of depicting places like hotels, which are places in which people stay for a very short time and maybe also have a very quick stay, give us an idea of melancholy again, an idea of things that are going fast also, and sometimes also an idea of solitude. Another group of artworks, along with the windows portraits or the restaurant portraits, are also couple paintings, like this one, House by the Railroad. Again, here the sense of alienation is very strong. We can see these two people, a man and a woman, which are in the same room, but seems to be very distant and far away one from the other. Again, elements of the setting are very recognizable. We can still see the yellow bricks outside. The railway, we'll see it's, we find it in many other paintings, and the seemingly glassless window. This is not the only couple paintings. As I said before, we can see another one here from New York, in which really we got the idea of uncommunicative situation of alienation, because we can see this man reading his newspaper and the lady instead idling by the piano. Or even in this case, excursion into philosophy. Again, a couple portrait. We have a window casting light on the man. This lady, semi-clad, sleeping on the bed, giving her back to this man sitting, completely dressed. With this expression, which gives us the idea of a reflective moment, probably. We know that the book opened on the bed is a book by Plato. We know this detail because this was found in Joe Hopper notes. She had very detailed notes of everything that was related to Edward's painting, and these have had critics, but people in general, a lot. in order to understand the, let's say, real essence of the paintings by this artist. Again, here we have a very similar situation, but with reversed characters. We have a naked man laying on a bed and a woman dressed, looking to the floor apparently. We have a window with some details from the outdoor space. Again, not only the characters, but also the way in which they are painted, the shadows casted on the woman, her expression, again, really give us the idea of this impossibility to communicate this loneliness, even if these two people are together in the same room. Again, thanks to Joe's notes, we can get some more elements about these two young people. The notes she made about these paintings say that the story between these two seem to be related to a marriage, or better, a wedding that was like denied by, not accepted by the girl. So apparently it might seem that the boy proposed to the girl who might have turned him down. Here, the light plays a key role, again, with artificial light opposed to the complete dark around this porch. Here again, we see another couple, but we add a new element, so the presence of this dog. Really, we get the feeling that something's looming in this painting, that something negative is about to happen, and that only the dog might have realized this. In fact, the dog is really positioned in the center of the painting. We can find a rural scene here opposed to the urban ones we have seen before. We go back to the city for an office setting. Here we have this view, let's say, which is from above. And some critics have suggested that this perspective comes from the fact that Edward Hopper was passionate about Broadway shows and went to these shows many times and watched them by a balcony. Here we have a different couple situations. We have these two people in office working. Apparently, the man is apparently working. The lady, her secretary, we don't know, next to him. We know that Edward Hopper made different studies for this painting on the figures, on their positions, apparently to underline the erotic, let's say, tension that might occur between the two characters. Also, another interesting fact is the juxtaposition of different sources of light. So we have a light coming from above, an artificial light coming from above, light coming from the lamp on the desk, light coming from outside. Another interesting fact is the idea that in a very static situation like this one, movement seems to be suggested by the fact that the curtain of the windows seems to be moved by the wind outside, as well as the dress around the woman's thighs. Again, an office during daylight. In this office in New York painting, in which we can see this man sitting at his desk looking outside. The man is not working compared to the other one we saw before, but he's looking outside in this concrete office as Joe defined it. Here we can see instead of a juxtaposition of light, the juxtaposition of walls and perspectives. In fact, the office has a very strange perspective. It has these two windows, again, the scenes without glass. We have the perspective on the building in front of it and on another white building in the background. Another interesting representation of New York by this artist is this street, this empty street in the early morning. Here the artist really wanted to give an idea of the urban life in New York. He represented the streets. It must be very early in the morning because we can't see anyone around, which is quite strange for a street in New York. We can only see this writing on a glass window, on the glass window of the barber shop, whether the colors are very blurred. And well, we can feel the presence of human beings because of the windows at the first floor, but really we can't see no one there. The presence of human beings here is only suggested. As we said, Edward Hopper depicted iconic places, and really gas stations can be defined like that. Gas stations are places where everyone will stop in their life around the United States. Here, actually, the painter decided to depict apparently not very important moment, because we can see this man who is probably cleaning or even closing the pump, but no one seems to be around. We do not see the car that stopped at the gas station. We don't know where this car has gone, and it seems like we have lost the important fact that happened. Again, we can see here in this shop the really absence of people, of any human being. We see this light against the windows, against the objects in the window, but we almost get the idea that this shop might be even closed, not working anymore. We do not see anyone inside at the counter, we do not see clients. A fact that really affected Edward Hopper's life was the burst of Second World War. He also experienced First World War, but wasn't really affected by this historical event. Instead, Second World War really impressed him, and I decided to show you this painting by him, which seems a very calm, I would say, painting with these boys sailing in this bright blue sea, obviously a rural sea, not a urban one. What's interesting here is the element of the bell there next to the boat, a bell which is about to ring to suggest the boys that a very big wave is about to come. And here we can see the feelings that Edward Hopper had towards the war. So he got the feeling that something very big was about to happen, that a big wave was about to hit the United States. Instead, in this painting, which was realized at the end of Second World War, we can definitely see something different. We have a girl, a fierce girl, looking outside at the sun, hit by the light, with this very sheer and soft dress, moved only a little by window, which by the wind, which moves the wind curtain of the windows of this building. Here This girl seems very fierce and can be seen as the, let's say, renaissance of the United States after Second World War. The idea that she's wearing this very bright and new dress expresses the moment the United States experienced after Second World War, which was a very positive moment in history. Now we completely leave human figures to focus on the paintings in which we can find natural and rural elements, like this one. Another element which we can find a lot in paintings by Edward Hopper is a railroad. We saw House by a Railroad before, and it's an element which can be found in many different paintings, and it is used also to express the idea of progress. In Railroad Sunset, we can see the passage from day to night, and we can see this thanks to the light of the sky and the colors. Here, the presence of human is only seen by the fact that there's this telegraph pole and also a signalman's house. The presence of railroad really gives us the idea of the width of the image, expressing the vastness of the American landscape. And in general, this painting with this recognizable but yet very common details gives us the idea of the vastness again of the American landscapes. And it's like a memento, we might say, of the let's say places that can be seen in all around the United States. Especially towards the end of his career, Edward Hopper was very interested in depicting rural spaces and natural spaces. For example, Cape Anachronite, which he created in order to also give us his idea of classical American landscape. Here we can find this very green slope, this sky with these cirrus clouds, this very green slope which alternates with the brown rocks. And then another thing that Hopper really liked depicting were houses, like the one we can see in this painting with the lighthouse. He stated that depicting the shadow and light hitting a house was one of his favorite things. And in this case, light is also used to give an architectural, we might say, signature to his artworks. Towards the end of his career, again, the paintings he made almost became surrealist, like these rooms by the sea, in which we can only see an open door that allows us to basically enter this room, and which directly faces the sea. And also in this painting, which is one of the last one he realized. In Sun in an Empty Room, which he realized 4 years before his death, Hopper rises to almost a unique mysticism with this very strong sunlight that he illuminates the empty rooms of his house and drawing perfect shapes on the walls. Obviously, light is again used in a very dramatic way, and also in order to amplify the suggestion that he wants to transmit to the viewer. This is definitely the last painting of his career. It's an homage to theatre, which Edward Hopper loved, but also a way to thank his audience, let's say, and also an homage to Jo, his wife, which is the person next to him on the stage, which he seems like to push to come forward and get the applause of the public. This artist, as I said, was an inspiration for many other artists. We saw musicians, other films, and apparently these paintings he made, his house by, again, next to a railroad, seems to have inspired Alfred Hitchcock for his film Psycho. Not all critics agree on this point because there are many differences between these two houses. Not only the architectural elements, which are not the same, the fact that in Hopper's painting, as I said, there's a railroad which we can't, railway, sorry, which we can't find in Hitchcock movie. Also, the position of the house, which is different in each Hitchcock movie, it is put on like a small hill, and it seems to be looming on us, a thing which the house by Hopper is not doing really. Many agree on the fact that Hitchcock got a lot of inspiration by Edward Hopper, like in these frame from Rear Window. Hitchcock is not the only one who was inspired by Edward Hopper's house. On your point, you can see a painting by the painter, which is called The Girly Show. And at the beginning of the 90s, also the pop star Madonna toured the USA with a tour called The Girly Show. And the pose recalls really of the artwork by Edward Hopper. Again, Hitchcock in Dial M for Murder. If you remember, this really recalls the settings we saw in the Office at Night painting by Edward Hopper, or even this profile in Vertigo. Then some artists thought that the paintings by Edward Hopper were so impressive and so full of meaning that, and almost real, that they would have been great if transposed into real scenes. This is a movie only made with basically scenes from Edward Hopper's paintings, and it's called Shirley's Vision of Reality. In this movie by film director Gustav Deutsch, Shirley, the main character, is a girl who lives her life like it was an Hopper's painting. Then we have the killers also, and one of the movie directors who was most inspired by Edward Hopper is definitely Wim Wenders. We can see here a frame in one of his films, The End of Violence, which obviously recalls us of the Nighthawks. Wim Wenders really loves Edward Hopper, and these frames, this one too, are taken by a short film he realized, 2 or 3 Things I Know About Edward Hopper, which was intended to be projected at a art exhibition dedicated to the American artist, which was set to begin at the beginning of March 2020 near Basel. Wim Wenders realized this short movie with pictures, basically, with scenes drawn from Edward Hopper's paintings. You can see some parts of the of this short movie on YouTube, for example. Unfortunately, this great exhibition was closed due to the coronavirus pandemic, but hopefully we'll be able to see these artworks by Edward Doppler again soon. Anyway, if you've ever visited New York or you happen to be in that city, you'd be able to see some of his great paintings in the MoMA Museum and Whitney Museum, as I said before already. My lesson finishes here. I hope you enjoyed having a look inside Edward Doppler's production with me. And I really hope to see you again next Tuesday for our next lesson in the art club course dedicated to the Guggenheim Museum. Bye bye.